Hey, I'm Sam, welcome to Brickwall Pictures. Today I'm doing a Ridley Scott tier list. He's been requested a couple times, and this is a dude who has made a whole bunch of movies. So I don't have all of his movies here. He actually has enough extra movies that I could do a part 2 eventually. Even had a couple movies come out recently, The Last Duel and House of Gucci, one of which is included in this list, because I didn't get around to House of Gucci, but the reason why I delayed this list as much as I did was to include The Last Duel in there, because I didn't see it right away. I also, if you can't tell, I shoot these tier list videos way in advance of when they actually come out, so. But yeah, we're covering Ridley Scott today, a director who I like a lot of his movies, but I have been a little critical of him in the past. In my video essay on giving actors freedom, I was a little critical of Ridley Scott because he doesn't tend to give his actors very much freedom. I think I compared him to like Clint Eastwood in the way that they're very like workman-like. They're a little bit of like assembly line director kind of. I mean, it works, obviously. He gets these movies made and he really cranks them out. But yeah, anyway, check out that essay if you want to hear a little more about that. It's not like the main focus of the essay, but that's just like a little aside within it. Anyway, let's get started with the tier list. We have 17 movies of his here, and they're in a randomized order. First up, we have All the Money in the World. The most notable thing about All the Money in the World isn't even anything that's actually inside the movie. The most notable thing is the sort of controversy and crazy post-production process that it went through, because as you'll see here on the poster, that is Christopher Plummer on the poster with his name all huge up top, but he wasn't even in the movie originally. This is the movie that starred Kevin Spacey before we realized how much of an awful human being he was. Ridley Scott and or the other producers, I don't know whose call it was, but they made the executive decision to snip his ass out of the movie and put Christopher Plummer in there, which I think is definitely an upgrade, and I think it's kind of cool. It's kind of crazy that they were able to do that. It must have been extremely expensive, but I guess the production had all the money in the world, you could say, to replace Kevin Spacey. Side note, you know those weird videos that Kevin Spacey has been doing where he's like in character as Frank Underwood but also as himself videos where he's like really threatening and bizarre? Did you know that those are on IMDb and they have like a 7.5 out of 10 or something? Like a lot of people are rating it very highly for some reason. Anyway, All the Money in the World, it's notable for that. It's not that memorable of a movie otherwise, to be perfectly frank. Christopher Plummer is good in it. He's actually the best part of the movie, which is impressive considering like his stuff is mostly shot later. It's all reshoots. It's an interesting process. The actual movie itself is okay. It feels like a very standard, nothing special kind of thriller. It's based on a true story of this abduction and, you know, J. Paul Getty and all that. Charlie Plummer's in it, who I like. I think he's a talented young actor. He's great in like Lean on Pete, for example. He's pretty good. Mark Wahlberg's in it, who, you know, whatever. The movie itself, it's got a couple interesting sequences, but I don't know. It just feels very like standard. It feels kind of like just a really expensive version of like a TV movie thriller from like the 2000s. I think C tier is where I'm going to put it. Anyway, next up we have Alien, which, you know, not going to fuck around here. Alien is S tier all the way. People always either go Alien or Aliens as their favorite of that franchise. At least usually there might be some weirdos who prefer Alien Cubed or something. I always go the first Alien. And I love Aliens too. James Cameron's sequel is also great, but there's a trade-off for you got more horror in Aliens and you have more action in Aliens. I love both genres. I definitely skew a little more toward horror. It's like one of the perfect films out there. It's such a great piece of sci-fi and of horror. It's extremely impressive considering how early on in his career it came. I hear people call Alien his first movie all the time, which it was not his first movie. I don't know why people get that wrong. People get that wrong with so many directors. They say, oh, it was his first movie, about like a bunch of directors, and they're like always incorrect. The next one we're going to talk about actually was his first movie, The Duellists, his first feature film, I should say. He had been directing for a long time, because Ridley Scott started out directing like commercials and industrials and stuff like that. That was his way into the medium. So he had been directing for many years already by the time he made The Duellists, but it was his first feature-length narrative film. And The Duelist is quite good, I would say. It's not perfect, and I think you can tell that it is. It does feel like a first film in some ways, and like a director who has more experience in things that are related to film that aren't exactly narrative filmmaking. There are a few shots that are like framed really tightly for no reason, and they just kind of feel awkward in the edit. Like the close-ups are just a little too close the way they're awkwardly shot. It's not like a huge detractor, but it is something you might notice. But outside of those few like little oddities, it's a gorgeous film otherwise. Like, it makes great use of real locations. This is a film set back in the 1700s or something. It's set in, far distant past. It's compared a lot to Barry Lyndon, but obviously it's a much smaller film than Barry Lyndon, nowhere near the same amount of budget. It was shot like all over the world to maximize those locations, and I think that was a good call. They really, stretched their budget to its maximum by doing that. This is a story of two men who are constantly dueling each other throughout their lifetime, which is a fun story. One is Keith Carradine, who's pretty good in the movie. The other one is Harvey Keitel, who I will say is really good in the part, with a big old asterisk to say that he's supposed to be playing a French general, and he just has his usual like Brooklyn accent. So you gotta get past that. He makes no attempt at like doing an olden French accent. It sounds like he's a New Yorker who's got a curly mustache. That's it. That's an impediment. You gotta get past that hurdle. Otherwise, he's really good in the role. You really believe the obsession and the like passion he has for dueling tied to his hatred for this guy based on this like barely even perceptible slight, which is a big part of it. It's a really good movie, rough around the edges. I think it's B. And by the way, if you want to hear my thoughts on like additional movies and sometimes deeper thoughts on individual movies, you can check out my Letterboxd. Like The Duellists is one that I wrote up a little review for. Nothing huge, but I go into a little more structured detail on The Duellists on Letterboxd. You can find a link to my profile in there in the description if you feel so inclined. You don't have to. I don't really give a shit. Just throwing it out there. Anyway, next up, let's grab Matchstick Men. This one is the most recent Ridley Scott movie I watched. I watched a few of these just for the purposes of this tier list. Matchstick Men I had on DVD for a while, never got around to. I finally figured, what the hell, let's pop it on. This is a con men movie. It's about a long con. It's kind of like The Sting, but like modern and less grandiose, less bravura. Nicolas Cage is in the lead role, and Sam Rockwell is great in the supporting role. He's just always really good. Nicolas Cage's performance gets a lot of acclaim in this one. I'll say it's one of his best performances. I think it is both good, but then it's like it's scene dependent. It's like some scenes he's like, wow, really good. Some of his best work. And then other scenes I could not believe him in the slightest. It's a very inconsistent performance, I feel. It's a character that's very like off the wall, very out there, which is the kind of role that Nick Cage often excels at. I think it's an uneven performance. I think he mostly comes out in a good light. It's a mixed bag skewing toward the positive, I'll say. The style of the film is interesting. It almost feels more like a Tony Scott movie than a Ridley Scott movie, if you're familiar with both of them. It kind of has more of a Tony Scott type of frantic editing style, I would say. It feels like a movie that would have been well made by Tony. The story is it's interesting, but I don't think it's anything all that special. It's based on a book, and I'd be curious to read the book and see how it lines up. The twist, because every con man movie has to have a big twist where they're, conning the audience as well. And in this, it was so transparent. Like, I won't spoil the twist, but I will say that, like, I thought it was plainly obvious from the very first scene where, how do I say this without spoiling it? From the first scene where the character who does the twist was first introduced. I was like, oh, that's the twist. It's like it's trying to do a twist and be surprising, but it has too small a cast of characters to be surprising. You need red herrings and misdirection and stuff for a twist like this to work, but the core cast of Matchstick Men is so small that it's like, well, of course that's the twist, because it couldn't be anything else. There aren't any other options. It's a combat movie, so you know there's going to be a twist. These are the ingredients before me. Obviously, that's the twist. But even though it is obvious, it's still like implausible, which is not a good combination. Anyway, the movie, it's okay. I don't think it's anything great. I think it's another C tier. Thelma and Louise. This was actually another one that I watched for this tier list, because I was like, I can't make a Ridley Scott tier list without Thelma and Louise on there. It's like this is a movie that really penetrated the zeitgeist. It was just one of those classics that I had like never seen, never gotten around to. Finally got around to it, and I think it's pretty good, but I don't think it's anything super great. I can see why it penetrated the zeitgeist because for its time it was a big, bold, feminist script, which is cool to see, especially at the time. There weren't a whole lot of movies like that getting made. It's a little bit like girl bossy, if you know what I mean. But for the time, I think that's like understandable because it was like that or nothing. You know what I mean? There wasn't like really room for. There wasn't a whole lot of wiggle room afforded to that back in the early '90s or whatever when this came out. The two leads are both good. Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis. They're both good. I really enjoyed Brad Pitt's performance. I think he was good. He looked unhealthy in this. He looked malnourished. He still acted well. He wasn't malnourished to the point of fainting mid-scene, so that was enough. But I liked seeing Christopher McDonald on there, even though he's in a pretty small part. Harvey Keitel's character as the that detective chasing them down or whatever. I feel like his character was underdeveloped. I didn't really get a good sense of who he was, or I didn't really buy that he was so passionate about finding these two. So that was kind of a little bit of an issue with me. One of the main things that holds me back from liking Thelma and Louise as much is the same thing that I take umbrage with pretty much all like road trip movies like Thelma and Louise, which is just the kind of, I don't really like the structure of a road trip movie. It's like, oh, we're here and then we're doing this thing and then we go here and then we do this thing and then we go here and we do this thing. And it's not exactly episodic, but it does feel very meandering in a way that like the events that happen don't really build so much. I was honestly expecting more of a progression from Thelma and Louise being, two like normal everyday people and then becoming these like badass characters at the end. And it's like there is a little bit of a progression, but there's a particular moment where they jump really extreme. And I just would have liked to have seen that spread out in a more gradual character development kind of way, where it's like they spend a lot of the movie feeling like static characters. They're the same. It's like from the moment that inciting incident happens, that event at the bar where, one of them shoots the guy. It feels like from that point until like really far in the movie, they're just like static characters. They're just going from place to place. And then all of a sudden, when that police officer pulls them over, it's like now they're suddenly different people. And now they've gone through all this character development. And now they're like the badass, tough people all of a sudden. Whereas there was no like ramp up. Even though things that happened to them that could have provided a ramp up, it didn't feel like they were shifting gradually. It felt one note and then, oh, now we're on the other note all of a sudden. I think I'm definitely in the minority on that because this is a beloved movie. I think it's good. The ending is iconic, of course. It's like C or B for me. I guess I'll be generous and give it a B. It is good. I take a few issues with it. Okay, next up we have Alien Covenant. And I put Alien in S tier. Alien Covenant ain't going in S tier. I'm going to give a little spoiler for Prometheus. Maybe I'll just do these at the same time. I don't like any of the Alien movies after Aliens, the second one. I don't like them one bit. Actually, I've never seen Alien 4. I've seen Cubed. I've seen the David Fincher one. I haven't seen Alien 4, which I think was directed by the Amelie director, weirdly. But don't like Cubed, don't like Prometheus, and I don't like Alien Covenant. Don't like any of them. Both Prometheus and Covenant, I feel like the thing that they do the most is hurt the lore of the original Alien. Like, I don't like this thing that is like the popular move in like the big budget blockbusters right now. And the thing is to explain stuff from earlier movies. All these like reboot quills and stuff are doing it. Like the new Star Wars movies are big on that. Like Solo. Oh, how'd he get his gun? It's like, who gives a shit? It's not more interesting to learn who handed him a gun. Stuff like that. I haven't even seen Solo. I'm just going on the trailer. I'm assuming that's what happens. If I'm wrong, maybe I am. All these like late reboot quills and stuff like that. It's like they're going out of their way to explain things that didn't need explaining. And it doesn't make them more interesting. It just makes the original movie feel a little like over-explained. And so like I try to pretend that these don't exist because like you watch Alien and you get into that big room with the huge crazy the gun and you're like, what the fuck is this place? What is this thing? What is it? And H.R. Giger's designs are crazy. And then you watch Prometheus and you go, oh, it's a a big alien guy got in a chair and then he like froze like that. It's like, that's not interesting. I don't want to know what that thing was in the original. The reason why it's freaky and it creeps you out is because it's the mystery of the unknown. Who is it for to see the guy get in the chair and sit on the gun? It's like, in what world is that information that I want to know? It's not like, oh, that's what that was. I don't get that kind of reaction. I get, oh, that's what that was. And both Prometheus and Alien Covenant are full of that. And beyond that, they feel like slasher movies in space now, which I guess you could argue Alien was kind of like a slasher in space, but it never feels like a slasher movie. It feels like a monster movie, you know. Whereas in Prometheus and Alien, the human characters just suck. And I mean, some of the performances are good. Like Fassbender gives a good performance, but I don't like his android. Actually, I don't really remember him too much in Prometheus, but in Alien Covenant, where there's like the two of them and they're playing the flute together. It's like, what the fuck is happening? I don't like it. Actually, to be fair, the flute scene was like the most interesting part of the movie. It's like, what is going on here? These robots about to bone down. So it was at least engaging momentarily for that. I think they just wanted to show off the effects, like, oh, we can move the camera and have them pass stuff to each other. It felt very show-offy on a special effects level. And I get the subtext, I get the symbolism that's going on, the like philosophical discussions. I get all that, which is one of the things that people who like these movies defend it for. And if you like them, I'm glad you like it, right? That's always my stance. I would prefer to like it as well. I'm not just like hating on it for the sake of hating on it. I know some critics, their whole thing is they destroy movies and hate on it. I prefer to talk positively about movies, but I'm going to be honest where I rank these movies, and I don't like either of them. I think they're about on the level for me. Prometheus does a couple things better than Alien Covenant, and Alien Covenant does a couple things better than Prometheus, but then they have different weaknesses, so they kind of cancel each other out. I also hate the idea that, the xenomorph was created from these two other alien things mating or like eating each other or whatever the fuck. I don't like that. Just let it exist, be its own entity. I don't know. They all make, each of these movies, they make the xenomorph less freaky. They make the lore less interesting. It's just a complete downgrade. I don't like them. They're not like F tier. They're still good film craft on display, but I can't go above E. They're not F tier worthy. There's good special effects. There are some, nice shots. There's some good production design. Oh, and I hate that the fucking xenomorph is CG for most of Alien Covenant. It looks awful, especially when it's like broad daylight and it's the big huge one on top of the ship. It's like there's a reason why you put it in the shadows and why a guy in a suit might seem goofy or whatever, but there's a reason why it's more effective than a weightless CGI thing in the broad daylight. Anyway, that's enough ranting about that. Next, we're going to Blade Runner. I don't like Blade Runner all that much, and I will preface this by saying that there's a whole bunch of cuts of the movie, and I've only seen it one time, and maybe I didn't see the best cut. I'm willing to rewatch it in a different cut. The one I watched had Harrison Ford's narration, which is like the worst narration I've ever heard. That's one of the reasons why I really don't like it. Now, at the same time, right, there's a lot that I do love about Blade Runner. Basically, from the time that they're in that hotel, that whole like final sequence, I love that final sequence. If the whole movie was on that level, I would love the entire movie. And I do love the production design throughout the entire movie. The city looks great. It's one of the best like sci-fi cities I've ever seen, and all the designs of all the sci-fi tech and all that. It's all great. I love all that stuff. And like Rutger Hauer's fantastic throughout. Harrison Ford's a little more uneven. I don't really like his Rick Deckard dude all that much. Like, I think that scene where he like puts on a weird voice for no reason is kind of embarrassing. I like the new Blade Runner more. I like Denis Villeneuve's Blade Runner a whole lot more. Blade Runner 2049, I think, was better. It was more engaging. Again, it's like not super story heavy, but the cinematography was just stunning, and he crafted some really compelling sequences. Even with the issues I have with it, it's still a really good film, I think I'll go see with it. There's like S-tier parts of it, like that sequence in the hotel, Rutger Hauer, his whole performance, honestly. I love Rutger Hauer in this, and his like ending monologue and all that. The action in the hotel and just like stuff like that, the production side, those are all S-tier components. Whereas the weaker elements are more like D-tier for me. They still don't go into like E or F. But like the narration, that's like D-tier stuff. I think I will give it a B to be generous, because the elements that are really good are really, really good. So, okay, next up is Gladiator. Gladiator was a huge deal when it came out. Won a whole bunch of Oscars. It was nominated for even more. I guess I'm just not really the biggest fan of Ridley's style. I know a lot of people like most of his movies more than I like them. Gladiator is one that I can recognize as really good, like exceptionally strong in terms of how it's put together. The action's really good. Ridley Scott's always been great with action sequences, even though you might not think of him as like an action filmmaker. With some of his movies, it kind of feels like the action was like the main draw, like what he's the most involved in when it comes to like directorial style, which is what makes it a little strange that he doesn't often do like straight up action movies. Like The Duellists is one where it seems like a whole lot more care and planning went into the actual fighting, the duels themselves, than like the dialogue scenes, for example. Maybe the same could be said for Gladiator. The same could definitely be said for Body of Lies later on, and I would argue with Black Hawk Down as well. The action in Gladiator, all really good stuff. The fights in the Coliseum and the like broader battles, all that stuff's cool. It stars Russell Crowe, obviously, who he's an actor who has worked with Ridley Scott a whole lot. I think he's pretty good at it, but I think the show is thoroughly stolen by Joaquin Phoenix as Commodus. His performance is just magnetic. For me, he's the reason to watch this movie. Like, yeah, the fights are fun, the battles are good, but Joaquin Phoenix his performance is so good. I think it's another B, I guess. At the same time, I don't know. I feel like it doesn't really... Yeah, I guess it's another B. It's like low B, though, is how I kind of feel on it. I know some people who would put it in A and S. I could go C on it, honestly. I think it's B, though. It is really well put together. Honestly, Joaquin Phoenix's performance elevates it a fair bit. Okay, Hannibal. Hannibal is one that I rewatched, not super recently, but like within the past, I don't know, year or two. And I had seen it a couple times in the past. So I've seen Hannibal like three times or something like that. Because I really like the Hannibal Lecter character. Like, I've read all the books. Well, not Hannibal Rising. I'm not going to read that book because fuck that book and fuck that movie. It's the same kind of thing of like, oh, a prequel for him where we learn his sister was eaten by Nazis or whatever. Which actually, if you've just seen the movies, that isn't information that was new to to Hannibal Rising, because you actually learn that in the Hannibal book. It's not in the Hannibal movie, but it is in the book. And so, yeah, I've read the Hannibal book. They're quite different, the book and the movie. Both versions of the story are a massive downgrade from what came before, meaning Silence of the Lambs. If you don't know, because the movie order is a little weird, they did, first they did Manhunter, which was an adaptation of Red Dragon, which is actually the first Hannibal Lecter story. Then they did Silence of the Lambs, and that was a big, huge success. But they hadn't done Red Dragon with Anthony Hopkins yet. They went and did that afterwards. So that it actually did come out first, even though the movie is, I guess, like a prequel or whatever. And then they did Hannibal. The order of the books is Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal. The movies make it a little confusing. So Hannibal is like the third one. It had Anthony Hopkins back in that role. And he's still good in that role. They replaced Jodie Foster with Julianne Moore. People call her, discount Jodie Foster for that reason because of this role and maybe some other parts. But I really like Julianne Moore, actually. I think she's a fantastic actor. It does feel like a different character kind of under her than it did under Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs. But at the same time, I don't really blame Julianne Moore. Even in the book, the character is a lot weaker in Hannibal than she was in Silence of the Lambs. The character, they just like stripped away a good bit of her agency in the second book, and they made her just a lesser character, I think, especially where she ends up at the end of the book, which is completely different than the movie. If you saw the movie and you're like, wow, this ending sucks, which I think it does kind of suck, the ending of the movie, but if you saw the end of the movie and you're like, wow, this ending sucks, if you read the book, you'll get a completely different ending that also sucks, just in a different way. The book has, I don't really like the book all that much. The Red Dragon book, I fucking love. Silence of the Lambs book is excellent. The Hannibal book is a huge step down. The movie adds some stuff as well. It's not just a subtraction process. Like, it adds in some action at the start. I mean, the book had like the opening shootout kind of thing, but the movie makes it way more actiony and action-packed. And again, it feels like Ridley Scott was drawn to the action sequences and like really made that huge, But the worst thing that the movie added that wasn't in the book was it added a fucking chase scene where Hannibal rides a merry-go-round. That was not in the book. What are you doing putting... this terrifying movie character on a merry-go-round for like no reason is so stupid. Yeah, really though, the characters just feel so much more shallow this time around. The part where Hannibal takes Ray Liotta's skull off and they like eat his brain or whatever, that's in the book. It's like it's almost creepy, but it's more just kind of goofy is how I read that. The best part of this movie, however, is Gary Oldman as Mason Verger. Mason Verger is the best part of the book too, and my God, he is even more fucked up in the book. Honestly, the book he's a little comical how over the top he is. Like in the movie, he's like, oh yeah, this guy's awful and he's fucked up and he's creepy looking, and Gary Oldman does a good job, right? In the book, he's even more like villainous. He's even more evil, but it's like it gets cartoonish how like there's literally a point where he collects tears from orphans and drinks them from a martini glass. It's like that's just too goofy. It's too evil, you know. It's too much. You got to draw the line somewhere. It's not believable. He's like a cartoon character at that point. Yeah, not a great movie. Huge step down from both Silence of the Lambs and Manhunter. I haven't seen Red Dragon in a while, the movie adaptation, so I don't really remember where that ranked. I don't like the director. I think that's a Brett Ratner movie. Fuck that guy. D if I'm being generous, or E. I'll go D, I guess. This is not terrible. You know, it's an engaging watch. It moves quickly. There's some good scenes. Denny Hopkins is still pretty good. The portion in Florence, over in Italy, is good in the movie. In the book, it's way too fucking long. It feels like Thomas Harris took a vacation to Italy. I call it vacation syndrome in books, which is very common, where it feels like a writer went on vacation somewhere to some foreign country and they had a great time and they just needed to write down every little thing. They needed to write down every little street they went to and describe the hell out of the architecture and stuff. And it's like, okay, chill out. It's not that interesting. I'm glad you had a good vacation, but doesn't make for a compelling story on its own. And the book suffers from vacation syndrome. The movie stripped enough of that away to make the Florence section more engaging. I think it's about a D overall. Next up is Black Hawk Down, which is a very uneven movie, I think. The battle sequences are genuinely incredible, like excellent portrayal of warfare, very intense, great use of special effects, I think. Really good choreography. It's one of the war movies where the battle scenes don't just feel like mayhem and warfare, they feel like action as well. And what I mean by that is that like it's exciting, not just harrowing, in the way that like Saving Private Ryan is like harrowing and intense, and it's perfect for that movie, versus something like Taeguk-gi, that South Korean war film that I love to recommend to everybody because it's super underrated in the States. It was huge in South Korea. Anyway, that one, you have that harrowing aspect of the warfare while also feeling like action that's exciting, and you can be like, oh, that's fucking cool, that, you know, a little encounter they had or whatever. Black Hawk Down has a little bit of that, definitely skewing more towards the mayhem of battle. I talked about it a little bit in my How to Film Chaos video essay. Anyway, so all the warfare stuff is great, and it makes up a huge percentage of the movie. The actual story, I don't think, is all that great. And the movie, I think, is just kind of dull and lifeless throughout the whole, like, boot camp portion of the movie. Now, that section of the movie should be getting you to really care about these characters so that you're invested in whether they survive or not once the shit goes down, when the helicopter goes down, you know. Didn't work for me, that whole opening section. I didn't care about these characters. I was just kind of disengaged. None of them grabbed me. I think it's still a good movie overall, though. This one is between B and C again. I think I'll go B on it. Being generous. The Counselor. The Counselor was a movie I was excited for ahead of its release. I remember seeing the trailer stuff being like, oh, that looks fucking good, based on the talent involved, because it was written by Cormac McCarthy. He wrote the screenplay, actually. It wasn't based on one of his books, which he had tried to do before. Like, here's a fun fact for you. Cormac McCarthy wrote No Country for Old Men as a screenplay, and he couldn't get it made. So he was like, all right, fuck it, I'll turn it into a book. Wrote the book, and the Coen brothers said, oh shit, that would be a good movie. So they adapted his book that was originally a screenplay into their own screenplay. Anyway, The Counselor, it was a script, and so I was excited for that. Ridley Scott behind the camera, and then like Javier Bardem again. I was really excited to see Javier Bardem in another Cormac McCarthy story, because obviously Anton Chigurh is such a phenomenal character and performance. And I liked Brad Pitt being involved in it and whatnot, and Michael Fassbender. Huge fan of Fassbender. So I liked the cast involved. The actual movie, right? It was just critically reviled. Everyone panned and said it was awful. So I actually didn't watch it for a long time. I only saw it relatively recently, within the last like 6 months or so. Finally got around to watching it, and yeah, it's not very good. It's not awful. There are a couple of great moments in it, of great moments of violence that are like shockingly brutal. One involving a motorcycle decapitation, which is great. I've actually seen it before in other movies, but I really liked that we saw this like languid build up to it. We saw the guy go out early and like tie the metal cable across. Like that made it so great. It kind of felt like the execution of showing the build up of this thing all mysteriously feels like the way that Vince Gilligan and co. do a lot in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and whatnot, where they show someone like working on an activity and you don't know what exactly they're doing, and then you get the payoff. Not to spoil it, but there's a moment involving a like collar, like a constrictive collar that is great. I loved how bloody it got. And then there's a really strong moment at the end involving a snuff film. That's a really strong emotional moment. That hits hard, hits very well. So it has those couple of moments. Not much else in the movie works. I think Brad Pitt's performance is good. Javier Bardem's performance, I guess, is good, but I never got a good feel for his character. Same with Michael Fassbender. I did not understand his character whatsoever, and that would be okay if he was like mysterious, but he's not. It feels like a character that you're supposed to understand, and I just didn't like. I didn't understand his motivations and why he was doing the things he was doing, which is an issue in a script. In a book, Cormac McCarthy can, tell you what's going on inside his head, but in the movie, it was just like, why is he doing these things? Why is he putting himself in this situation needlessly? It's like he's already rich. Why is he going to such crazy risks to get more money when he doesn't really need money? What, just to buy a bigger diamond for his girlfriend? It's like I said, it's hard to gauge the performances because I think the characters are really weak. I think Brad Pitt probably comes out the best. He injects the most personality into his character, even though he probably has less screen time than some of the others. Cameron Diaz seems maybe a little miscast. It's not very good. It has a couple good moments, but also the story is just kind of like it's like self-defeating. It's like there's no purpose for it, and not in a way that feels thematic like McCarthy's other works. I do kind of feel like the problems with it mostly come down to the screenplay, which is unfortunate to say because I love McCarthy as a writer, but I feel like maybe if he wrote it as a book and then the Coen brothers adapted it into a script, it would turn out better. Because the Coen brothers adaptation for No Country for Old Men is truly an incredible adaptation. It's like one of the best adaptations out there. But then so was The Road. The John Hillcoat's adaptation of The Road from McCarthy's novel is another incredible adaptation. So The Counselor, I think, gets a D. Some people would probably put it lower. Actually, I might even go E. But those couple of moments, I think, are really strong. Like, I can see them very vividly in my head, those couple of moments. And I think more so than some people, I do value when a movie shows me something a little different or that can leave an impression in the way that does, like the collar thing. Okay, next up we have The Martian. This was a huge deal a couple of years ago. Big Oscars contender. I wouldn't personally give it any Oscar nominations if I was in charge of that, but I do think it's good. It's very entertaining. It feels very pop culture-y, and by that I mean it feels like it fits the mold of pop culture. Not that it's like referencing pop culture all over the place. It has a good sense of humor. It almost feels like a Marvel movie in terms of like tone, which is not really my cup of tea. I like it more than most of those movies, though. I like the sort of like gung-ho presentation of science. I think that's fun. Matt Damon's performance is genuinely entertaining. Like it's funny. You're not gonna be like laughing your ass off or anything. But there's lots of like little chuckles and smirks through it, like light humor kind of stuff. I don't even know if you would call it a straight up comedy. Maybe it's more like a sci-fi adventure. It feels very surface level, simple, very consumable, if you know what I mean. But I do like it more than other similar like consumable kind of movies like that. I think I'd go C though. I could be urged into a B, but I'm gonna go C. Okay, Body of Lies. This one I wasn't too familiar with. I had actually only heard of it when I was looking through Ridley Scott's filmography to make this tier list. It was one I hadn't heard anybody talk about. But then I looked at the reviews and they're all like, most of them are quite positive. And then I was surprised when I watched it by how little I liked it. I did not like this one at all. This is the other one where it feels like the action is what drew him to it. Like the action sequences are super fun, and there's a lot of them, especially at the beginning. Those are engaging. But then I just hated the characters and the story dynamic. It's a double bill between Leonardo DiCaprio, who's like a, secret agent almost. He's like almost a spy, but not really. He's like a souped up military dude over in the war in the Middle East who like goes around and does, special missions and shit. First of all, cheesy. I mean, whatever. And then Russell Crowe is like, he's like a surrogate for like a Bush era politician, the guy who he's his boss, right? And when I was looking at reviews for it, everyone was talking about how, the sparks always fly between DiCaprio and Crowe whenever they're on the scene. I got no sense of that. Whenever they shared the screen, it was the same scene over and over again. Leonardo DiCaprio goes in all yelling and screaming, why did you do this? Why didn't you tell me what's going on here? Right? And then Russell Crowe goes, relax. And then he gives him some arbitrary information that he had previously withheld, but he had no reason to withhold it. And then DiCaprio's like, okay, fine. And then he goes back to work. It's just like that over and over again. It was so repetitive. The love, side plot, the romantic interest. First off, it just feels so unnecessary to the story being told. Like they really just jammed a romance in here because it's like a checklist. You had to check off romantic interest for DiCaprio. It completely didn't work for me. But also, it feels really implausible that these two characters would ever cross paths more than once. So that didn't work for me either. Mark Strong probably shouldn't be playing the character he's playing, if you know what I mean. I didn't like it. Good action scenes, but the story and characters just completely left me cold. I think it's E. Robin Hood. Who asked for a gritty Robin Hood reboot? Who is it for? And then they've made like 2 or 3 other Robin Hood movies since then. Why do we keep doing Robin Hood without I guess this is supposed to be a fresh spin on it, but it's like you just made it gritty. Like you made it look like a war movie. That doesn't do anything for me. I don't know. Maybe that feels like fresh and exciting for some viewers. If it does, cool. For me, it's like, who cares? Why would I want to see Robin Hood like this? I don't know. That doesn't work for me. D. The Last Duel. Those of you who've been around this channel for a while know I don't usually I don't enjoy being negative. I gotta be honest. I did not like The Last Duel. I know a lot of people are like, it came out the same year as House of Gucci. A lot of people were like, House of Gucci sucked. Last Duel's great. And then it was mismarketed. It was a big bomb and all that. I didn't like it. All right. If you want to read my full thoughts on it, check out my little Letterboxd review. Yeah, I have issues with it thematically. It's doing the Rashomon approach, where it's telling the same thing from 3 perspectives, which I like in theory. I even like for this story in theory, where it's who do you believe or whatever. But just the actual execution of it, I feel like does not earn that Rashomon-style approach, because the differences are also surface level, and it's the actual crux of, the truth. I feel like it shows the same thing all 3 times. Even in the segment that's from the perspective of the rapist, it's not like it presents what he did as anything other than him raping that character again. It's you're just showing the same thing again. It's not are you trying to imply that that wasn't what it was in the middle chapter when it's from his perspective? Because I don't like that if that's what you're going for. The production of it all is all very impressive. The movie, it looks great. The locations, the costumes, the hair and makeup. I mean, blonde Affleck doesn't exactly do it for me. But whatever, at least it was a choice. Jodie Comer, I think, is a fantastic actor. She's really great on the show Killing Eve. She does come off the best in this. I don't know, it felt very heavy-handed. It felt a little girl bossy. When she's going around fixing up all the stuff in the kingdom, it felt look, okay, come on. Be a little more... There's no subtlety in the whole movie. Like all the symbolism with the horses, it's come on, my eyes are going to roll out of my fucking head. A little subtlety would go a long way in this movie, and there is no subtlety. Don't like the script, don't like the presentational choices. I like the presentation choices in theory, I just don't like them in execution. And I think it comes down to the script mostly. The actual last duel, the duel at the end of the movie, I think is great. It's very tense. I love the how graphic the final kill was. That was fun. Just did not work for me. It's a D. Okay, American Gangster. I'm glad we can end on a positive note here, because I do like American Gangster a whole lot. Again, I don't know if I would quite go A with it, but I'll definitely go B with it. I guess there's no A tier, there's only one S. There's no F. That's something. American Gangster I really like. I love gangster movies in general. This is up there with the best gangster movies, but it's not on the level of like a Goodfellas or like a Godfather or anything like that. It's definitely, a substantial notch below that, but it is good. It's got a good script with a good true story. The story of Frank Lucas. This is a two-hander between Denzel Washington, who's fucking great in the part, and Russell Crowe, who's good, but his character's not as interesting. They're both good, though. When they finally meet, they don't share a whole lot of scenes together, but they are good when they finally do share the screen toward the end of the movie. I love Idris Elba's small role, especially like his one big scene where he gets shot in the head in the middle of the street. I fucking love that scene. That's the highlight of the movie. The fact that he's like, what, you wouldn't do it, and then he shoots. Oh, it's such a good scene. The supporting cast is really good. Like you have Chiwetel Ejiofor in there. He's great to see. Common's in there. Ruby Dee got an Oscar nomination for her role in this. Riz is in there. John Hawkes is in there. So, good cast. So let's review. We have one S tier, which definitely S tier. I don't think any of these others come even close to Alien, which is why there's no A tier. Are there any I would consider moving up to A? I guess possibly when I rewatch Blade Runner. Gladiator, I guess there's a chance I might move up on rewatch because I haven't seen it in a long time. If I was going to move any of these down, honestly, I could see moving Thelma and Louise down. I could see moving Black Hawk down. Black Hawk down. I could see moving All the Money in the World down. Just moving everything down at this point. I'll leave it in. Will I? No, I think I'm going to move it down. I think I'm going to move All the Money in the World down. And turn it sideways, apparently. Didn't mean to do that. I could see moving Matchstick Men down too. Anyway, I think that's where I'm going to leave his ranking. I feel like a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this one. It is also a very long one because you have a lot of movies. Feel free to disagree. If you like these movies more than I do, then good, happy for you. Check out more of my tier lists and subscribe right here to Brickwall Pictures for more stuff like this. Thanks for watching. Bye.